Are we there yet?
No!
Are we there yet?
No!
Are we there yet?
No!
Are we there yet?
Yes!
Dad, I'm hungry.
Today we learn about the positive impact some of the most loved cruise brands will have this summer. And we will commemorate 100 years of adventure, tradition, and the extraordinary bond between this iconic cruise line and the beautiful country of Australia.
So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and members of the media, it's an honour to stand before you today as we celebrate Cunard's deep and enduring connection with Australia. A bond that has spanned a century and continues to grow stronger with each passing year. As we look ahead to our upcoming season, I'm thrilled to share with you that will be a record-breaking 125-day home port season for Queen Elizabeth. But that is not all. Early next year, we will welcome our newest ship, Queen Anne, to Australian shores, extending our local season to an unprecedented 145 days. During this time, our two queens will log 65 port calls from New Zealand to the South Pacific, from Fremantle to Townsville, welcoming more than 35,000 guests on board. This upcoming season also holds special significance as it marks 100 years since Cunard first sailed into Australian waters. Our presence here predates some of Sydney's most beloved icons. Not only was the Opera House not built when we first visited, neither was the iconic Harbour Bridge, which wasn't completed until 1932. Allow me to take you on a little voyage down memory lane and share some of the milestones that have defined Cunard's century-long relationship with Australia. Our journey began on the 30th of December 1924, when the Cunard mainline vessel Albania made her first ever call at Brisbane. While most of her space was dedicated to cargo, Albania offers small yet well-appointed guest accommodation area. Today we have a print of the ship's logbook on display, along with other wonderful historical items from our Liverpool archives and the Maritime Museum here in Sydney. Yes, we have been keeping records longer than most of us have been keeping New Year's resolutions. Just 1 year later, in December 1925, Australia became part of a world cruise for the first time. During her maiden voyage, Corinthia, the which we have a cafe named after on board the ship, called into several ports across Australia and New Zealand, including Sydney, Auckland, Hobart, Melbourne, and Fremantle. Even then, our ships were known for their innovation and luxury, featuring the first cabins at sea with hot and cold water. Imagine that. A 5,000 square foot sports arena with a swimming pool, gymnasium, squash and tennis courts, and even a dancing area on deck. Bespoke shore tours, such as visiting Taronga Park via motorcar, added to the allure of the journey. During the tumultuous years of World War II, Cunard's Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, Mauretania, and Aquitania were converted right here into troop ships in the Cockatoo docks and engineering. These mighty vessels carried tens of thousands of Australian and international troops, with Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth standing as the largest troop ships of their time. In the post-war era, February 1949 saw the arrival of the MV Georgic, carrying 2,010 migrants from Britain and marking the beginning of the assisted passage scheme. This vessel became the largest migrant ship running between Britain and Australia, enabling hundreds of thousands of British families to start new lives in this beautiful land. In that first year alone, Cunard carried up to 80,000 £10 bombs. I'm not sure you can find a deal like it these days, but I'm sure if I dig deep, I may have £10 in my pocket for a second. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, with our legendary ship Queen Elizabeth II, Cunard's relationship with Australia grew even stronger. The ship's regular presence in Australian waters allowed locals to enjoy a 5-star holiday at its home. In 1985, Cunard even chartered the Concorde to bring 100 guests to join the community. The Concorde broke the record at the time for the fastest trip between London and Sydney, completing the journey in just 17 hours, 3 minutes and 45 seconds, including refueling stops. I wish I could get home that fast these days. In 2007, Sydney came to a standstill as two queens met in Sydney Harbour for the first time in 40 years. The Royal Rendezvous of Queen Mary II, the largest passenger ship to call at Sydney at that time, and Q2 drew thousands of Sydneysiders eager to witness this historic event. Massive crowds also turned out in Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide and Fremantle to bid farewell to the Q2 in 2008, with the call at Sydney timed to mark the 30th anniversary of the ship's first visit. And you'll see some pictures of that over on the boards over there. In more recent years, since 2012, Cunard has continued to strengthen our ties with Australia. Our ongoing visits have seen our modern queens become beloved fixtures in Australian cruising culture. In the last 10 years, almost 250,000 guests have sailed on board the Cunard Queen in Aussie waters. Some of the highlights include Queen Mary II's maiden circumnavigation of Australia, where she rendezvoused at sea with the replica of Captain Cook's HMV Endeavour, and Queen Elizabeth's 2015 voyage, which honoured the 100th anniversary of the Gallipoli campaign by sailing with 11,500 poppies destined for Gallipoli in remembrance of Australian lives lost during World War I. We've also home-ported Queen Elizabeth in Australia for the summer for the past few years, and in a nod to this nation's rich heritage, we created a dedicated Australian uniform for our iconic bellhops, in partnership with the renowned brands R.M. Williams and Cooper. Our connection with Australia continues to be enriched through partnerships with some of the nation's greatest icons, including but not limited to Delta Goodrem, Brett Lee, Matt Moran, and David Warner. And now, rather than just taking my word for it, let's take a visual journey through our shared history, a century of adventure and elegance that has been captured in this special film. Thank you.
For over 180 years, Cunard has sailed the world's oceans, where adventure meets new beginnings and luxury intertwines with tradition. In Australia, this journey has been one of exploration, transformation, and timeless elegance for a century. A 100-year story that honours the past and looks boldly towards the future. It all began on December 30th, 1924, when the Albania graced Brisbane's shores. Though primarily a cargo ship, Albania offered luxurious spaces for those seeking comfort on the high seas, from Brisbane to Sydney to Fremantle. This voyage etched Cunard's name into Australian waters. 1 year later, on December 28, 1925, the Corinthia brought grandeur to Australia. During her maiden world voyage, she dazzled, leaving Australia spellbound with her elegance and luxury, even receiving a welcome message from Prime Minister Stanley Bruce. In the 1940s, as war loomed, Cunard's Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, Mauretania and Aquitania arrived at Sydney's Cockatoo Docks, transformed from leisure ships to the largest troop ships of their time, carrying thousands of soldiers through a world at war. Post-war in 1949, Cunard's MV Georgic ushered in a new chapter, one of hope and new beginnings. As the largest migrant ship, she carried over 2,000 10-pound ponds to Australia, helping reshape the nation's future. In 1985, a new marvel took flight, the Concorde. On Valentine's Day, it set a speed record from London to Sydney, joining Cunard's Queen Elizabeth II and Saga Fjord in a rendezvous that epitomised elegance and ambition. Sydney Harbour witnessed maritime history as Queen Mary II and Queen Elizabeth II met in 2007, drawing thousands of spectators. The city stood still, captivated by the grandeur of these iconic ships. A year later, after nearly 4 decades of service, Queen Elizabeth II bid Australia a final farewell. In each port, crowds gathered to honour a ship that had become part of their lives and their history. And the story continues. Cunard's bond with Australia deepened through regular visits of its iconic queens. In 2012, Queen Mary II made her first circumnavigation of Australia, marked by her rendezvous with the HMS Endeavour. From saluting bushfire heroes to honouring the Gallipoli centenary, Cunard's modern queens have woven their legacy into Australia's rich tapestry. Queen Elizabeth was homeported in Australian waters, with iconic bellhops donning uniforms inspired by this land, and forging new partnerships with Australia's finest brands and personalities. As the years pass, Cunard's ties with Australia only deepen. With each arrival, each departure, and each story told, the legacy grows. A legacy of shared journeys, moments that define us, and a future that sails ever onward. Cunard and Australia, bound by history, united in luxury.